All right, you kids can head on back to your classes. I heard a little bit of giggling there. That was good. I'm glad some of the jokes worked. So for those that don't know, that video we just showed, we have a studio that's part of our ministry in a shop behind our house. And so even in quarantine, we get our family members together and we make videos. So that was one that was fun to do this year. Well, I want to talk one last time this week about Christmas according to the prophets. And so in the last few weeks, we've looked at this concept that the prophets were foretelling something that was coming, something that was big, something that was important, and really kind of a gift that God was going to give the world. And as we've looked at in past weeks, when the prophets talked about this gift, they saw to some extent that it was sort of a two-part gift, but they didn't realize, it seems, that the gift would come over a large amount of time, that there would first be kind of a first installment and then a hiatus, and then a sort of fulfilling of that gift. And we'll see that once again as we look at our verses today. Now, what I want to talk about today is probably the best known prophecies about both the Messiah and the coming kingdom, and they show up in Isaiah. Isaiah is one of the major prophets. And by the way, when we talk about prophets and we say the major prophets and the minor prophets, that's not like the major leagues and the minor leagues, which I don't exactly understand how that works in baseball, but in terms of prophets, the reason we call them major prophets is just because we have a lot more of certain prophets. Some prophets, we don't have a whole lot that was preserved. Maybe they wrote more, maybe they didn't, we don't know, but God preserved the amount He wanted us to have. In Isaiah, there's actually quite a bit that we have from Isaiah, and that's one of the reasons we call him one of the major prophets. So let's just take a look at some of the things that Isaiah has to say. We're going to start in Isaiah 11 in verse 1. So let's take a look at what he says there. He says, "There shall come forth a rod from the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots." Now, this seems really mysterious until we understand a name that's in here. There's a name in here, Jesse. Now, does anybody remember who Jesse is in the Bible? It's kind of in a sense, kind of a minor character. He comes up in a story or two, but do you recall who Jesse was? David's father, that's right. So by saying that he's from the stem of Jesse, basically what he's saying is there's going to happen something in the line of David. And so Jesse is David's dad, therefore that would come into the lineage. Now notice what it says, is there shall come forth a rod from the stem of Jesse. Now it's kind of a play on words I think here, because he says there's a rod, but then he calls it a branch, and this branch shall grow out of his roots. So there's going to be this rod, this branch that comes out of the family of David, or the tribe of David, which is Judah. Now, if we just had this verse, we might be a little confused about what is this rod. So let's see if he develops that idea a little bit. In verse 2 he says, "The Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of the Lord." So now we realize that this rod is actually talking about a person. So the rod, the branch, that's a metaphor for someone who is coming, someone who is going to be a descendant of David, a descendant of Jesse. So we're talking about a person who is also a branch and a rod metaphorically. Let's see what else he says. "His delight is in the fear of the Lord, and he shall not judge by the sight of his eyes, nor decide by the hearing of his ears." Verse 4, "But with righteousness he shall judge the poor, and decide with equity for the meek of the earth. He shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth." There's that word. So the rod has to do with this person who uses his own word, his own speech, to affect the world, to influence what's going on in the world. "He shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall slay the wicked." Verse 5, "Righteousness shall be the belt of his loins, and faithfulness the belt of his waist. Two really important words there, righteousness and faithfulness. Now, I don't know about you. I think we've had some really amazing leaders in the history of this country and even in the history of the world. But it's hard to call any particular leader righteous and faithful. Most leaders prove eventually to have some flaws and some faults. But what we're finding out about this leader, this ruler who will influence the entire world with his speech, he's righteous and he's faithful. It's an important aspect. Verse 6, the wolf shall dwell with the lamb. The leopard shall lie down with the young goat. The calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. So here we not only learn about this Messiah character, this person who is to come, but we learn about the world and what it's like when he does come. Last night, my kids and I watched this new nature show. We watch nature shows every once in a while, and this one is called. It's put out by Apple, I think, and it's called Night on Earth. That's what it is. There's two that are very similarly named. I think this one's called Night on Earth, and what it is they've developed new technology to shoot in pitch black, dead of night, and they're shooting wildlife, not shooting with a gun, shooting with a camera. And so they have kind of a new window on what the wildlife in, say, Africa, in that continent is. And so they have these amazing shots of these lions hunting and wolves chasing down their prey, and we sort of ooh and awe about that because it's frightening, it's amazing, it's awe-inspiring. But how much more amazing will it be when this world comes to pass that we're talking about? The wolf also shall dwell with the lamb. Can you imagine, if you were a farmer, taking a baby lamb and putting him in with a wolf? I guess farmers don't actually raise wolves, but imagine just putting them in together, not even worrying about it. The leopard, one of the most deadly nocturnal hunters, the leopard shall lie down with the young goat. And not lie down because he's going to make him his lunch. Lie down, I guess, because they're friends. I think I just spit all over myself. Sorry. Got a little excited there. The calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. I love that last line, a little child shall lead them. Like the human race is designed to offer leadership to the entire world. And when's the last time you led an elephant or a leopard or a lion? But what we see is even children will fulfill that role in this coming kingdom when the Messiah arrives. And so remember, when the prophets talked about the Messiah, and we just noticed it, they would talk about the Messiah, and then in the next sentence, they would talk about this amazing renovated earth, this amazing new era that the Messiah would usher in. And they did not see that long hiatus that would happen between. Let's see what he says next. The cow and the bear shall graze. That's interesting. Even the bear will chew the cud, so to speak. Their young ones shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. What this tells us is that there are some physiological changes that are going to have to happen to the wildlife of Earth. Because right now, as far as we know, lions don't eat straw. That's not something they do. So here's a long time ago, probably 3 or 4 years ago, not that long ago, I was kind of doodling with, sometimes I like to doodle and draw, and I thought it would be funny to do a little painting of a lion. I should have pulled this up, but have a little painting of a lion, but he has human teeth. Because if a lion's chewing straw, he doesn't need those fangs. He's going to have just choppers like us, I guess. I don't know. I really don't know that. The Bible doesn't tell us that. But it makes sense. He's not going to need those sharp fangs. Maybe the physiology of even the animal kingdom will change. We don't know. But imagine getting to hang out with these animals. I'm really excited about that. Notice what he says next. The nursing child shall play by the cobra's hole. Now, my wife's pregnant, and I don't know if there's a cobra's hole anywhere near us, but there is this place in the woods near us that we've been told is a den of coral snakes. And it's kind of right behind our house and a little bit to the east. And I don't let my kids go back in the woods by themselves because I'm imagining all of these coral snakes just kind of writhing and moving around. But in this new era, you don't have to worry about it. Your kids, your grandkids, your great-grandkids, they can go out and they can play with a cobra. I mean, that's amazing. And not just a cobra, but in the cobra's hole. Stick the arm in there, and these snakes will be their pets or whatever. It just tells us the shift in the nature of the world. And remember, this is the world that the Messiah brings. And so people who reject Christ, what we often don't mention to them is, if you reject Christ, you're rejecting this world that the Christ is going to bring in, that the Messiah is going to usher in. And the weaned child shall put his hands in the viper's den. So, it's pretty amazing the shift that we're going to see. 11 verse 9, they shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. It's pretty amazing. The world is going to be a different place. And this is what the Messiah brings to our world. And not only does the world change and become a very different place, but even the knowledge of God is spread throughout the world. You can talk to anybody about the Lord, and they're going to know something about Him in this kingdom era. Well, let's jump a little bit farther. We're going to kind of bounce around in Isaiah a little bit. Let's go to chapter 32, because Isaiah kind of picks up this same concept of kingdom again there. He says this, "Behold, a king will reign in righteousness." There's that adjective we see again, that very important aspect. Very, very rarely in the history of the world has there been a king or a leader who you could say is trustworthy and ultimately righteous. But this Messiah is going to be characterized by righteousness. Behold, a king will reign in righteousness. What he does, how he reigns, is in righteousness. And princes will rule with justice. Now, we developed this a little bit last week, but we kind of see it again here, that this king, this King of Kings, as he's called sometimes, is going to rule over the world, but he's also going to allow others to rule with him, to share his throne, so to speak, as it says in Revelation 3. And so these princes, which I take this to mean men or women, I don't think it's just men, I think it's men or women will rule with justice. And we know from the New Testament that this rulership, this reigning with Christ, actually comes about by believers being faithful to Christ in this life. And so we see this King of Kings, and then we see these princes that he allows, that he delegates authority to. 32:2 says, "A man will be as a hiding place from the wind, and a cover from the tempest, as rivers of water in a dry place, as the shadow of a great rock in the weary land." Verse 3, "The eyes of those who see will not be dim, and the ears of those who hear will listen." We have this very difficult thing going on in our society, and it's that we don't seem to be listening to each other. I mean, groups of people like this room, we listen to each other, I think, quite well, but what we see in our society is this growing division between groups that disagree. And it feels like we're sort of lobbing verbal grenades back and forth, and we're just talking past each other. But what we see in this world that's to come, that the Messiah will usher in, is that people will listen. People will hear what each other are saying. They will take the time, and they will see things as they really are, as opposed to what we see in our time now. Verse 4, "Also the heart of the rash will understand knowledge, and the tongue of the stammerers will be ready to speak." Jump forward a few verses. Verse 15 says, "Until the Spirit is poured upon us from on high, and the wilderness becomes a fruitful field, and the fruitful field is counted as a forest." Yet again, we see a shift in the way the world is going to be. So a huge percentage of the world right now is desert, right? I don't know if you've ever been to a desert, but it isn't pleasant, and people generally avoid living in the desert. But what we find in these prophecies is that this is another piece of what's going to happen in the future world that the Messiah ushers in. That the desert is going to become fruitful. It's going to become lush. Now, people often, and I don't know whether I agree with this or not, I don't have the knowledge to know, but people often talk about how the world is becoming overpopulated, and I don't think that's probably true, but if you could make the desert spring up and be fruitful, then you can imagine how many more millions of people could live on the earth if that was a possibility. So this is something that the Messiah will bring in. He will allow the world to become lush once again. And then it tells us this, then justice will dwell in the wilderness and righteousness remain in the fruitful field. 17 says, the work of righteousness will be peace, and the effect of righteousness, quietness and assurance forever. Some really great adjectives in there. First of all, peace. Wouldn't it be neat to live in a world that was characterized by peace? I mean, our world is actually pretty peaceful compared to the world that has come before us. I mean, for most generations, there was some grand war happening somewhere on the planet at all times. And there's still conflicts going on right now. But in this era, it will be peace. The Messiah is going to usher in peace. It begins to bring some light to some of those phrases that were said on the night when Jesus was born. So the work of righteousness will be peace, and the effect of righteousness, quietness and assurance forever. Imagine a world that could live in assurance. That would be an amazing place. 32:18 says, my people will dwell in a peaceful habitation, in secure dwellings, and in quiet resting places. 35:1, we're jumping to chapter 35 here. He continues to develop this idea of wilderness. The wilderness and the wasteland shall be glad for them, and the desert shall rejoice and blossom as the rose. Once again, we see that same concept that those dry and desolate places begin to blossom. It says it will blossom as the rose. Notice what he says here in 41:18. He says, I will open rivers in desolate heights and fountains in the midst of the valleys. I will make the wilderness a pool of water and the dry land springs of water. So, once again, he will allow it to blossom. And we kind of see that there is actually just a practical way that he does this. It's not just magic. He doesn't just snap his fingers. He actually is changing the way that here's a nerdy word, the hydrological system works. He will actually allow new rivers to flow in places where they either haven't flown in a long time or maybe have never flown. And so I love this idea that he changes the world, but he doesn't just snap his fingers. He changes the world in probably a very similar way to the way he created it. He uses the natural system to enhance and allow it to become fruitful. Notice what he says in 41:19, I will plant in the wilderness the cedar and the acacia tree, the myrtle and the oil tree. I will set in the desert the cypress tree and the pine and the box tree together, that they may see and know and consider and understand together that the hand of the Lord has done this, and the Holy One of Israel has created it. Now, to me, it's interesting that he tells us why he's doing all this. He's not just doing it because he likes a green landscape, which I assume he does because the world's very green. But he's doing this because he wants the world to understand something about himself. And in fact, I think that probably is one of the great motivations for creation in general, is that God wants to be known by his creation. And so what he says here is he's going to take these wildernesses, these deserts, these desolate places, and he's going to transform them. And that's going to tell the world something about who he is. So apparently there's going to be this memory, I'm kind of making an assumption here, but there's going to be this memory in this future world that, hey, this used to be a desert. And now it is lush, it's a forest, these amazing trees, and all of this fruitfulness is here. And we can give God the credit for that. And so I think it tells us a good bit about what the world is going to be like, but also what the world will realize based on these changes. The world's not just unaware of it. They will see that this is something that God has done. Notice what it says in 42:1, one chapter later. He says, behold my servant. Okay, so we've returned to this idea of this person, this servant who is going to bring about all of these changes. He says, behold my servant who I uphold, my elect one in whom my soul delights. I have put my spirit upon him. He will bring forth justice to the Gentiles. Now here's one of the things that might be surprising to the original Jewish audience. They might be reading through this and they might say, hey, this is great news because, Jerusalem, for instance, in Judea is surrounded by desert. We could really use some trees and, it'd be amazing if the desert became fruitful. And so it'd be easy to read it and not realize that he's not only talking about what will happen in Israel, but he's talking about what is going to happen in the world at large. And how do we know that? Well, notice what it says. He says, I have put my Spirit upon him. He will bring forth justice, not only for the Jews, but for Gentiles as well. So this justice, this peace, this fruitfulness, this is something that expands throughout the world. And we can begin to imagine this world where not only is Israel at rest, not only is Israel fruitful, not only are the deserts in that part of the world fruitful, but the rest of the world as well. So he says, my servant whom I uphold, my elect one, in whom my soul delights, I have put my Spirit upon him, and he will bring forth justice to the Gentiles. He goes on to say, he will not cry out, nor raise his voice, nor cause his voice to be heard in the streets. Verse 3, a bruised reed he will not break, and smoking flax he will not quench. He will bring forth justice for truth. Verse 4, he will not fall nor be discouraged till he has established justice in the earth. There again, we see that same concept, that this justice, this righteousness, this faithfulness, this is going to benefit the entire world. And in some sense, you can think back to that moment where God tells Abraham that through your descendants, the entire earth is going to be blessed. And this, when this comes true, when this prophecy comes about, that'll be when that prophecy to Abraham is actually fulfilled, that he will bring this new world to the entire world. He says, and the coastlands shall wait for his law. So it will spread from sea to shining sea, which we usually think of just as an American phrase, but it will spread throughout the world, even to the coastlands. Verse 6, I, the Lord, have called you in righteousness and will hold your hand. I will keep you and give you as a covenant to the people, as a light to the Gentiles. This is really cool to me because what this tells us is that in this new world, and I think this is probably always the vision for God electing the Jewish people, is that they are going to be a light to the rest of the world. God is going to have this special place for the Jewish people to then share his light with the Gentiles, to go out from the place where they are and to share this righteousness, this faithfulness, this peace, even as it said a moment ago, God's law, God's instruction. They're going to be instrumental in spreading that throughout the world. And I think those believers that are, that believe in Christ even now, I think they will probably also be involved in that same work. And so I will keep you and give you as a covenant to the people, as a light to the Gentiles. So here again, we see another gift that God gave the world. And now you probably won't hear this preached at a lot of churches, but I actually do believe this. One of God's gifts to the world is the Jewish people. He's going to use and has used the Jewish people in huge ways to improve the world. Now, I think this is very true in the coming kingdom, but I think it's also very true in our own world today in some practical ways, but also in some spiritual ways. I mean, if you think about it, our Bible, the Bible that's sitting in your lap, came to us through the Jewish people. It was written by, everybody in it that wrote a book in the Bible is from Jewish descent. Even Jesus came to us from the family of David, the tribe of Judah. The Jews are what God used to bring us even the Savior of the world. And so this is another part of the gift, is His people are going to impact and influence the world. It's amazing to imagine how this world is going to be. Verse 7, to open blind eyes, to bring out prisoners from the prison, those who sit in darkness from the prison house. Look at verse 9 here. Behold, the former things have come to pass, and new things I declare. Before they spring forth, I tell you of them. Once again, we could almost say this is another part of the gift, is that God allowed Himself to be testable in a sense. And what I mean by that is He gives us prophecy, and we can see it in this verse. He gives us prophecy so that we can test whether or not He's trustworthy. So if God never allowed any prophecy to appear in the Bible, it'd be very hard to look at the Bible and say, yeah, we can trust it. But because He predicts the future, because He tells us what's coming before it happens, we can say, this is written by somebody that knows something that nobody else knows. And so, once again, even prophecy in God's Word is a gift that God gives the world. And we see that in an amazing way when the Messiah comes. Because the former troubles are forgotten, and because they are hidden from my eyes. That's verse 16. Look at verse 17. For behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former shall be remembered or shall not be remembered or come to mind. So at some point in the future, and we see an echo of this at the very end of the book of Revelation in the New Testament, and what it seems like happens is there comes a point where this world that we are in does sort of fade from memory. It's a distant, it becomes so distant as eternity marches on. And so that's what we see there, that it will be remembered or won't come to mind. 65:18 says this, but be glad and rejoice forever in what I create. For behold, I create Jerusalem as a rejoicing, and her people a joy. I will rejoice in Jerusalem and joy in my people. The voice of weeping shall no longer be heard in her, nor the voice of crying. You can imagine how sweet these types of prophecies would have been for the Jewish people who had struggled so much. And this benefit that we see coming to the world through the Messiah, it will be a gift for the entire world. But you can imagine those original readers and those original people who listened to Isaiah say these things, and they probably thought, I want that. I want that time to come. I want that kingdom to arrive. Verse 20 says, no more shall an infant from there live but a few days, nor an old man who has not fulfilled his days. A person who lives 100 years will be called young. That's amazing to me. We see once again, a huge shift in even the physiology of the world, the lifespan of the people that live on this planet. Now, as far as we understand, those who are believers in this current era will be completely immortal at that point, have eternal life, and will live forever. So what he's talking about, it seems, is natural people who are born and live out their life on the earth in this era. And what he tells us is that even a 100-year-old person will be considered a young person, which implies, and we don't know how long, but it implies that people live a very long time. In fact, maybe they live indefinitely. I mean, maybe they continue to live. It's a little bit mysterious exactly what the specifics are. But one thing we know is that you'll be considered a youth if you make it to 100, and then you continue to live and live and live. And so you can imagine the difference in this world that we are going to take part in reigning with Christ in. So that's an amazing one. So no more shall an infant from there live but a few days. And it makes me think once again, my wife is pregnant, and we live in an era now where infant mortality is pretty low. I mean, the percentage of babies that we bring into the world is pretty amazing. But in the ancient world, it was, I read this recently, that like 80% of babies who would be born didn't make it through the birth. I think it's 80% through the birth, and then another huge percent didn't make it to the age of 2. I mean, this was the world they lived in. And so these statements would be so surprising to the people who they were originally intended for. So no more shall an infant from there live but a few days. That was very common in the ancient world. Nor an old man who has not fulfilled his days. A person who lives 100 years will be called young. They shall build houses. This is 65:21. They shall build houses and inhabit them. They shall plant vineyards and eat their fruit. So they have a very natural life on the earth. They shall not build and another inhabit. This was something that happened a lot. For anybody that's experienced persecution and strife, but definitely for the Jewish people. They had often built and rebuilt cities, and then they would be captured, they'd be exiled, and other people would come in and live in those houses that they had built. And so what this is telling is that kind of thing will not happen in this future world. They shall not build and another inhabit. They shall not plant and another eat. For as the days of a tree, so shall the days of my people. I left out a B in there. So shall be the days of my people. So once again, the people that will live natural lives on the earth are going to live very long amounts of time, like a tree. And I don't know what the average lifespan of a tree is, but it's a long time, and that's the point. And my elect shall long enjoy the work of their hands. Once again, we see a slight shift in this future world, that the work that God gives people to do will be, we might call it blissful. They will enjoy it. And you can imagine in the ancient world, a lot of the work that people had to do was not all that enjoyable. It was just manual labor that had to be done if you wanted to put food on the table. So what he tells us here is in this new world, people are going to enjoy the work that they do. They'll benefit from it, but they'll also find fulfillment and satisfaction in that work. 65:23 says, "They shall not labor in vain, nor bring forth children for trouble, for they shall be the descendants of the blessed of the Lord, and their offspring with them." Sounds pretty amazing. 24, "It shall come to pass that before they call, I will answer, and while they are still speaking, I will hear." I really love this. I don't know if you've ever experienced this where you're praying for something that you feel that you need so badly, and you begin to wonder, does God even hear my prayers? Is anybody even listening? Are they just bouncing off the ceiling? But what he says is that in this era, that he will hear while they're still speaking. He'll already know what it is that people need and what people need to ask for. And so it's an amazing promise that before they call, I will answer, and while they are still speaking, I will hear them. 65:25 is very similar to what we saw already. I'll just read this section quickly. "The wolf and the lamb shall feed together. The lion shall eat straw like the ox, and dust shall be the serpent's food." I don't know what that line means. There's debate on what's going on there. The dust is going to be the serpent's food. I think that's a reference to the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Not completely sure. If you got ideas, I'd love to hear them after the sermon. "They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain." So, here is probably the most famous passage in Isaiah. And so I saved it for one of the last. There's actually two kind of short ones here that are the last. And you'll begin to probably recognize how this relates to what we think of as the traditional Christmas story. So notice this. He says, "Nevertheless," and this is chapter 9, verse 1, "Nevertheless, the gloom will not be upon her who is distressed, as when at first he lightly esteemed the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, and afterward more heavily oppressed her by the way of the sea beyond the Jordan in Galilee of the Gentiles." Now that's very interesting because we associate Galilee with Jesus, of course, because that's where he grew up. For the readers of the time, in Isaiah's time, Galilee was had this denigrating name. It was Galilee of the Gentiles. And it was because Galilee had become completely surrounded by Gentiles. And in fact, if you were from Galilee, you weren't spiritual. That was the mindset of the people at the time. And so the Messiah, it would be unthinkable that the Messiah would come out of Galilee. That wouldn't make any sense. But here we see Isaiah prophesying that something important is coming out of Galilee. So in Galilee of the Gentiles, the people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in the land of the shadow of death, upon them a light has shined. Now that kind of even gives me chills a little bit to think about that this land that everybody would have thought, that's a nothing place. The Messiah couldn't come from there. He's saying that's where the light is going to shine. Verse 6, we'll jump forward a few. Notice what it says. "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulders, and his name will be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace." What an amazing prophecy. And by the way, if you read this chapter, or even a few chapters around this in Isaiah, this stands out like this strange beacon right in the middle of what he's talking about. And that's how prophecy is sometimes. It's almost as if they're going along, and then they have like this kind of revelation, and then they say this thing, and it's almost like, wait, what did you just say? What are you talking about here? And if you have no context for the Messiah and for Christ and a little bit about the story of Jesus, then you could pass over this and just think, well, that's just prophet speak. I don't know what he's talking about. But once we kind of understand a little bit about Christ, Jesus, the Messiah, this begins to make sense. I mean, read it with that context in mind. For unto us a child is born. Unto us a son is given. And here is the split, right? Because for the prophets, they would often talk about the coming of the Messiah, and they would talk about his kingdom right next to each other. They would come right together, and they wouldn't necessarily delineate the fact that there will be many years between the moment when the Messiah arrives and the moment when the Messiah takes hold of his kingdom. So that little return there, you could think of that little semicolon there after given, you could think of that as potentially thousands of years. Thousands of years between the fulfillment of these two sentences. So for unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given. And we could say the subtext is that there will be a passage of time, and then notice what it says, and the government will be upon his shoulders. Has that happened yet? Well, not on earth. Now, there are people who say, oh, the kingdom is now and it's invisible or something. I'm too practical for that. That doesn't work for me. What this says is that the government that Isaiah has been talking about, a worldwide government that ushers in peace, is going to rest on this person who came. And so for me, if I'm just being honest and literal and practical, this hasn't happened yet. We're still waiting for this to happen. And I think we do the best to just admit that we're still waiting. And that's what we do. And the government will be upon his shoulders. And his name will be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God. That's a pretty interesting one to me. That even Isaiah, looking down through the passage of time, recognizes that this Messiah who comes is associated with the person of God, that he himself will be identified as God in the flesh. And so his name will be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace. So this Messiah is the one who ushers in all of this, and we are eagerly waiting for that to come. Notice what he says next. Of the increase of his government and peace, there will be no end, upon the throne of David and over his kingdom, to order it and establish it. Now, there's a word in there that's really interesting to me, and it's increase. It says that his kingdom, his government, will continually increase. And I take that to mean forever. For eternity, his government will increase. And so what that says to me is a couple of things. There must be people being born. There must be an expansion of this kingdom. There must be more people coming into the world. And so at some point, you can imagine that even the planet might be filled up. And it makes me, this is totally speculation, but it makes me wonder, will we expand even to other planets, other parts of the galaxy? I don't know. I'm not saying we will, but I'm not saying we won't, because what we see here is that his kingdom, his government will continue to increase and increase and increase. How does that happen? I don't know, but I'm excited to find out. I'm looking forward to, well, a lot of things here. So, of the increase of his government and peace, there will be no end, upon the throne of David and over his kingdom, to order it and establish it. Notice what the rest of the verse says, judgment and justice from that time forward, even forever. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. That last line kind of resonates for me, because it's like he's saying, this isn't just something that I casually want. This is something I'm zealous for. And I'm talking on behalf of God here, God is zealous for this. He's so zealous, in fact, that it's going to be him that accomplishes it. And we see that in the story of Jesus, the Messiah, we see him working. And in the story of even, we could say even the past centuries, the past millennia, he is working toward this goal. His zeal is what drives him to accomplish this, and he is driving ever forward. Now notice this almost haunting phrase that shows up in the middle of chapter 7. And again, if you read this chapter, it's kind of like he's talking about one thing, and then he says this, therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. And then he stops talking about that and goes back to talking about this other thing that he was talking about. But what he says here is that this is a sign, this virgin birth that, as far as they knew, had never happened in the history of the world. I mean, who's to say? But it seems like something that just is impossible. And many people probably took this to be like a metaphor or something. But he says this is the sign that he's the Messiah, that there will be a virgin who conceives. And so, therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son and shall call his name Emmanuel. Now, for me, that closes kind of the prophecy of Isaiah on this subject. I mean, Isaiah does say a few more things, but that is kind of the final word. And I want to just jump forward many centuries, actually. Because all of that we've looked at today was written many centuries before the Messiah arrived. So notice what we have in Luke 2:7. And this is a very familiar one. Even a not-so-famous Amos kind of alluded to it. So he says, for those who are watching online, that probably made no sense. We did a puppet thing a minute ago with a character called Not-So-Famous Amos. So I'm trying to give some context there. So here's what Luke says. And she brought forth her firstborn son, wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for him in the inn. Now, or room for them in the inn. Now, I want you to just contrast. Hopefully what we've done is we've built an amazing kind of scenery about what the Messiah would be like. The Messiah will arrive, and when he arrives, he'll sit on the throne of the world. He'll change the deserts into lush forests and productive land. He will usher in peace in the world. I mean, all of this. I mean, he will be born into the royal family. I mean, that's another piece of it. You would expect him to be in one of the wealthy houses of the royal family, not a peasant. But here we have a peasant girl and someone who's not even the father of her child that's in her womb, and they can't even find a place to stay for the night. There's no place in the inn. They can't even find a bed. My parents brought us the other day this bassinet. I don't know exactly what the definition of that word is, but it's like a thing that you put a baby in, and it's a very expensive thing you put a baby in, apparently, from what I've told. They couldn't even find anything like that. All they had was a trough where they fed the animals. Now, is that what the people who read Isaiah would expect? I would say absolutely not. But what I love about it is that God is so surprising. I mean, remember, he said that his zeal will accomplish this. He's got this plan. And it's an exciting and mysterious plan. And at every turn, we take what we thought we know and we look at what actually happened and say, well, I see what he meant now, but boy, I wouldn't have expected that in the beginning. I wouldn't have expected it to be fulfilled that way. And that's what I love about the prophecies, is they're vague enough to not be able to predict exactly how it's going to happen, but they're specific enough that after it happens, you can look back and say, oh yeah, that's what he meant. And that's what's so beautiful about the prophetic message all through the Old Testament, is that we see Christmas in it. But it's a different kind of Christmas than what we think. We have kind of this retrospective 2020 vision, but Christmas, according to the prophets, was something pretty different. And the mystery and the majesty that came with the Christmas when Jesus was born is just really exciting. Now, we did this last week, and I think maybe we'll wrap this whole series up with just a quick discussion. We don't have maybe a minute or two here, but I'd like to just ask you, what stands out to you about some of the passages we looked at in Isaiah? What was it was there anything that was new to you? Was there anything that's exciting? Anything that kind of jumped out at you? What would that be for you?
Isaiah 9:6, calling Jesus, this person who was born in a humble place, mighty God and everlasting Father.
Yeah, it's amazing. And even Mary, probably at the time, would have not connected that. I mean, it probably took years for people to kind of put it together and say, oh, Isaiah was talking about this guy. I mean, it's amazing. Other thoughts or comments? Yeah, Tom?
Just that a little baby, born in a feeding trough, is going to accomplish all these things we're talking about, renewing the whole earth,
Yeah.
creating peace, and the fact that it will never end.
Yeah.
Continue to build and get better and better and better.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's exciting. When I was a kid, obviously we did something for Christmas every year, and it just kind of got repeated so much. It just kind of lost its what is the word? Its novelty, and it became so repetitive that it's just kind of like, yeah, it's Christmas, Of course he would have been born in a trough, and of course there would have been shepherds, But at every turn, when you think about, it's kind of like what you're saying, Tom. At every turn, when you examine the Christmas story, it's almost perfectly opposite of what we would expect. Like almost every single aspect is opposite of what we would expect, and yet it still fulfills what the prophets say. And that's what's so surprising, is like all of the aspects seem to be turned on their head, and yet they still fit into what the prophecies say would happen, And so it's fascinating. It's so amazing. It's just like there's no way that a human could fulfill those, That has to be supernatural. So I love that. That's a good thought. Maybe one last comment or idea or not. Oh, yeah, Peggy.
What just amazes me is these prophecies were made 700 years before Christ was born. That would be like somebody in the 1300s.
Yeah.
Saying things that were going to come true now. But what I love is what you said. These prophecies have been fulfilled. That means we can be sure that the prophecies about his second coming will be fulfilled.
That's good.
And I love it that you remind us almost every week that Jesus might come this week.
Yeah. And I certainly hope he does. Yeah. I love that you did the math for me. It'd be like somebody in the 1300s predicting that you're going to wear a red shirt today. Because some of the things that are said are so bizarrely specific. Now, one of the great chapters in Isaiah, which doesn't so much talk about his birth, but talks about his life and his death, is Isaiah 53. I mean, the specifics that it gives are incredible. And it's hard to read that chapter now. Now, if you know something about Jesus, I challenge anybody that has like a basic knowledge of, Jesus, the cross, his death and resurrection, to read Isaiah 53 and not see Jesus in that. And like you said, it's written centuries before it happened, and so and it's things that he couldn't have fulfilled like intentionally, So it's amazing. It's amazing how the Bible fits together and points toward Jesus of Nazareth. Even Nazareth, who would have thought? Such a small place. Well, I certainly hope that you guys have a wonderful Christmas, and I'm thinking, let's see, Christmas is on Thursday, is that right? Yeah, that's what I almost said. Friday. And so we've got basically a week leading up to it. I hope that you get the opportunity to get with some family. I mean, I know that getting with family is a little bit difficult right now with the sickness, as my daughter calls it, but hopefully you're still able to connect and maybe share some hope and some peace and faith with those that you get together with. Let's pray. Father, thank you for your word, and thank you for your prophets who gave us such specific and interesting visions of what the world would be. And Lord, I pray that we would not grow weary in doing good as we wait for your return. Lord, I pray that your return would happen this week. I pray that we wouldn't have another Christmas before you return. I pray that it could happen soon. Lord, I pray that we would look forward to that we would not put our own interest first, but that we would seek first your kingdom. Lord, I pray that as we get together with family, that we would be able to share the hope that we have and share the peace of mind that we find in you. And Lord, I pray that this season would not be so busy that we lose sight of what you're doing in the world and what your zeal wishes to accomplish in this world. And I pray, Lord, that we would be part of that. I pray you'd keep us faithful until you do return. In your name, amen. Thank you, guys. It feels like, anyway, hey, it's good to see you guys.
Whoa.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
My heavy
all the way
parts,
around.
which are my legs, want to spin that way. Hey, so what are we doing tonight?
We're doing Christmas according to the prophets.
Yes, and we're going to do a little discussion. So this is based on a sermon from this morning, and here's the graphic. And now we're away from the graphic. So also here. So this morning, why don't you tell them what happened this morning? It's a Sunday, so.
It's Sunday. So this morning at Shreveport Bible Church, Lucas went there and shared a message on Christmas according to the prophets. Is this what you're looking for?
You're doing good. Just keep rolling, man. It's smooth as butter. What else? Anything else? And did you happen to see it this time?
I did.
Okay, well that's good.
Not as you were doing it because I was occupied, but.
Well, and I called you this morning to send me a video file that we had shot that we were going to use for. Now we used it at church this morning, but you didn't see it on the live stream. If you did watch, if you didn't watch, you also didn't see it on the live stream. But why don't we talk a little bit about that? What we're going to do sometime this week. Not sure when.
Christmas Eve.
We're going to do it Christmas Eve
at 5 o'clock, I guess. Unless y'all tell us, hey, could you do it at this other time? Because we have some family tradition thing we do at 5 o'clock on Christmas Eve.
Like what did you have in mind?
I don't know. Maybe some people do dinner at
My family is a family of
non-tradition.
Impulsive gift openers. So
They get too excited.
It's almost like, why wrap it? Because we know we're not going to make it till Sunday morning.
You don't usually wrap.
Well, I don't. Yeah, but I mean, other people do.
Your mom does.
Mom does.
A good job of wrapping.
Yeah, so for Eileen's birthday, which was this week as well, and so was mine, I gave her a large stapler. And I guess you noticed that. It's a stapler this long. See, she likes to make books, and I thought, she needs the right equipment to make books. Obviously, I believe in equipment. I'm into that. And I was digging through the hidden quarters of the back of the shop the other day, and I found my rusty old book stapler, and I thought, she'll like this. And she did.
She did.
She kind of cradled it. It's like the kind of thing you'd find in a teacher's
supply closet.
Supply closet. You know, she sort of got it out and is like holding it like Excalibur. Like I'm exaggerating
There's not really
a little.
any other way for her to hold
well,
it.
how else would you? Because to her it's this big. You know, it's like that. But anyway, it was kind of a unique present. But I think she actually, and she used it. She's made a book, and she's still getting it figured out because we stapled a book together for her to begin illustrating, and then halfway through she ran out of content and said, could we unstaple it and take the back pages out, you know, so she's kind of figuring all that out. Anyway, so presents, that's, you know, so that was, I heard a good story from one of the elders' wives at church who led worship this morning. Therese, and she said her birthday is the same day as mine, which was 18th, which was Thursday. Is that right? Thursday?
Yeah.
And so she and Bob,
Friday.
she and her husband went to somewhere to eat, I think a lunch or whatever. And then they were like, well, let's go for a walk, you know, and it had been raining. And so they started walking, and they came to this point in the trail where it was really wet, and she thought, okay, I'll go around. And her husband, Bob, apparently, I don't know where he was at this point. He kind of stood back and watched this unfold. So she tried to go around the edge of the trail, and she said she sunk all the way up to her knees in mud.
No.
So she was covered in mud. She said she posted it on Facebook. I don't get on much, so I didn't see it, but having her tell the story was pretty funny. So that was her that was her birthday. So
I feel sorry for people who have birthdays in December. That's a hard month to celebrate birthdays. Eileen wanted to do a sleepover with her cousins, you know, a very simple request, and we couldn't make it happen because of...
Well, we tried.
Yeah, we tried. We tried with some cousins, and then they had a cough and a few other things, and so we had to, you know, cancel that. And then we had one cousin left that was healthy. We tried with that, but she couldn't make the night. So
she came for a while,
yeah.
But she's never done a sleepover, so by bedtime, she was saying,
she wanted her own bed.
I want to go to mommy. And so, and boy, the kids cried on that one. I thought she said she was going to stay. Like, well, I mean, she's 4. I mean, she said that, but whatever. So, kind of, but it was okay. It was still kind of fun. We built a fort. Okay. And for the evening of my birthday, we were going to have my parents come over, but then Mom got a cough or something.
A headache and
wasn't
some
feeling
sinus
good.
Stuff.
Yeah, and so we drove over and parked it in their driveway and sat in the car and
talked through the
rolled
window.
the windows down a little bit. And, so a really weird holiday. I mean, probably one we'll remember. I mean, it's kind of been unique so far. So what about you guys? Like, how's it shaping up for y'all? Are y'all, has it been weird so far? I guess Christmas hasn't hit yet, so we'll probably find out. So maybe we'll have some interesting stories next week. But you can put it in the comment section if you have any interesting happenings. So, okay, so we kind of got off on that, but what we're saying is Christmas Eve, we're going to do...
That's where all this
started.
It's
casual. We're going to do kind of like a special. I was thinking of calling it like a Christmas special, which makes it sound more official than it is.
Christmas Eve candlelight service. Candlelight plus TV screen or phone screen.
Yeah, candlelight. That's not bad. I like candles.
Maybe, light some candles. And there will be something just for the kids. And they'll get to hear from not so famous Amos, the donkey. And
we showed that at Shreveport Bible this morning, and the kids liked it a lot. It was fun. Which candles, by the way, you don't know this yet. So, got to church and was thinking, this is our last Sunday before Christmas. And at Shreveport Bible, we had to take a break for a while because of we had a number of people that had COVID. And so we took a break because we're a pretty small congregation to start with. And so we took a break. And then we came back in swing of December, and like all of our plans that we had were just... And so we get there this morning, and Krista's not back yet because she's pregnant. We're trying to keep her kind of away from some of the unknowns, I don't mean the people are unknown. That sounded like the unknowns. But just to be safe, because we don't want to have COVID at this point. But anyway, we get in, and I think, man, I'm going to decorate.
Did you do that?
It's Christmas. Well, let me tell the story.
Okay.
I don't mean that rude. I mean, you'll see what I'm seeing. So I start kind of rooting around in the supply closet at church. I'm looking around, and then Margie spots me. Now you know Margie, but you guys maybe don't. Margie is a professional
home stager,
which doesn't mean she puts on theatrical productions with homes. I mean, you explain it.
So
They probably know what it
someone
is,
who
but what
wants
it-
to sell a house, they hire her to come in and stage the house to where it looks like, she told me before, some term that you want it
It's like lightly occupied or something?
No, it's like elevated living or ideal living. It's
Yeah,
like
okay.
you want it to look comfortable and homey, but there's no clutter or any of that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. So just enough touches
real
to make
simple.
it easier for you to imagine yourself
Yeah.
living.
Well, so she saw me looking for the fire starter and just going through the closet. And all I'm thinking is a flame would be cool. I mean, that's really all I was thinking is a flame, a candle, you know. So I was imagining just like one solitary blazing pyrotechnic show behind, on the back of the stage. And so anyway, she kind of came in and went into staging mode, and she started pulling stuff out. She found some trees, and I had like this many candles, and I started setting them up, and she just quietly walked up and grabbed 2 of them. And even now, I don't know what was wrong with those, but they didn't fit, I guess. So she just grabbed them and walked away. I was like, okay, yeah, whatever, you're the pro. So anyway, we sort of decorated. Really what it was like the camera shot for the live stream at church is like this wide, and we decorated about this wide. So
It looked good on camera.
It looks
That's
like
all I
it's
saw.
decorated,
I thought,
but
Margie must have gone up and done that this week.
No, nothing else was done. But it was kind of fun doing that with Margie. So anyway, if you're watching, Margie, thanks for helping out. But so back to Christmas Eve, we're gonna do this kind of like, I don't know, candlelight special thing. So what we got so far is Levi has got some Christmas music that he's done for us. Now he's shot it at his house because we're kind of even still quarantined a little bit from some of our extended family. So he offered to shoot something at his house and zap it over to us. And so he was really excited because he had a new method. And it's really cool. He does looping and stuff. It's really cool. It's he explained it, but I didn't understand it. But he was really excited about it. So I think that's going to be fun to hear. And so he's got some Christmas favorites. We've got that. We've got Not So Famous Amos, which is a funny. I thought it was funny. The kids seemed to think it was funny too, but I think actually the adults maybe laughed even more when we showed it this week. Peggy James is our children's director at Shreveport Bible, and there was one moment where, I can't remember where it was in the skit, but she laughed. It was like one of those really loud, solitary laughs. And it was so much so that somebody else went, "Ha, Peggy!" So that was kind of fun. So it was pretty good. So anyway, we'll do some different things, and then we'll probably kind of MC it, I guess. I haven't decided if we might chop up Levi's music and kind of do that spread out, or maybe something else. But what I was thinking is maybe we open it up for little videos from you guys to connect with us, to tell us what you're doing for the holidays, how the holidays are different, and how God is still good in your life, and what's going on there. So that'd be kind of cool to get some videos from you guys. So you can just shoot it on your phone, zap it to us through Facebook or email or whatever, and we'll get it up when we actually do that. So sometime before Christmas Eve. We'll probably shoot it before Christmas Eve. So
Yeah.
So anyway, that'll be fun. It'll probably just be us, doing kind of what we normally do. So it'll be kind of an intimate thing. So anyway, I think that's all the housekeeping stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about Christmas according to the prophets. Now, you don't like it. What? Yes.
Well, I was going to say, we do have the comments up today where we can see
Oh,
them.
yeah, we
We
actually
didn't
can
have
see.
that last week.
Something was
so
wrong last week, yeah.
We hope that you'll interact with us as we
Yeah.
start
And
discussing this.
if you
next
leave a
month.
comment and it doesn't seem like we're seeing it, I think we see all the comments, but I don't know. Every once in a while I've wondered, are we really catching everybody's? Because I know
Yeah.
you guys are just typing away like crazy, and it looks kind of like this. Wow, that looks really weird on camera. It looks like my fingers are, well, anyway. Yeah, go ahead and respond if you've got thoughts, ideas, comments, snide remarks, or hilarious comedy. We want to read it. So I realized we kind of went into like sermon-ish mode last week, and we went through all the verses. I don't want to do that this week.
Yeah, there's a lot of verses.
But I thought it'd be interesting to maybe talk about a few of them.
Which is also what you said last week.
Yeah. The difference is I got the clicker, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click past a bunch of them because there was a bunch. So I don't.
Well,
so,
last week we couldn't see your comments, so that we kind of had to be in.
yeah, we were
It
just
was
talking.
just us talking. So
Yeah, that's true.
we apologize.
So, oh well, no, she
I
apologizes.
apologize.
I don't really
I
apologize very
apologize
good.
often.
I don't do it very often. I do it when it's needed, and I try to do it specifically.
His mean more.
Well,
I throw out apologies like.
it's like a card trick. It's like, take any card. And you're like, and she's like, it doesn't matter. Just, I'm very sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry for, and I always, what's my response?
What,
Haven't noticed?
what is your response?
For what? I mean, pretty often I'm saying, you're sorry for what? I don't even know what you're talking about. You didn't infringe upon my whatever. Now, why do you apologize so much?
I don't know. It's probably a topic for another day. I don't know.
Nah. So, so why do you think I don't apologize so much?
I think you generally have more confidence than I do.
But see, confidence can be bad. We probably ought to meet in the middle somewhere. I probably ought to apologize a little bit more, because it's like squeezing tomato juice out of an onion to get apology out of me. Probably. And then what's
No,
the
you
phrase? What,
apologize.
that's not right. Turnip, something out of tears out of a turnip, or
I don't know this phrase.
you never heard it? Mm-mm. You guys heard it? What is it? Maybe it's a Southern phrase. To get blood out of a turnip. To get blood out of a turnip?
That didn't make any sense.
Well, of course
you
it
can't
doesn't make
squeeze
sense.
the turnip.
These
They're
things-
really hard.
I know. I think that's the point. I don't know. If you guys have heard a turnip phrase, tell us, because I can't remember.
Or onion or tomato juice or blood.
Tomato juice? Nah, it's not hard to get something out of a tomato. Oh, I said tomato juice, didn't I? I don't know. I was
saying
making it up.
All the things you said.
Anyway, yeah. So
We can start.
Let's look. Well, we have started. We are way in. We are way in.
We can start with some actual content.
Okay. I'll tell you what. Let's put this one up. And this camera shot. And ooh, look how big my head is. Okay, so. No, that's not going to work. Well, what I was thinking is, if I have to go back here, then I can. You know how I like to point.
Yeah, I do.
But
You're practicing your pointing.
she walked in earlier, and I was doing this. Well, but it was actually on this one. I was doing
You're
this.
pointing at ornaments.
I was like, I want to see what it looks like when I point, you know? Oh, we should tell them, we're kind of rambling, but I don't care. We should tell them what we did this week, because I thought it was a grand achievement. It wasn't our grand achievement. I think it was GES's grand achievement. So we had Bob and Sean from Grace Evangelical Society. You may have heard them on the radio and various places. We had them to the studio this week, and those dudes shot 40 videos. I mean, they were just one after another. I mean, they had it kind of planned out, but really they didn't have many notes. They're really used to this because they do their radio show, you know. And so they came in, and I had a little intro and a little outro, and that's basically, I would hit that and I would just run the cameras, and they do 5 minutes. They'd take like a 1 minute pause. Okay, we're ready for the next. And it was pretty amazing. So over 2 days, we did, I think, 22. I don't think we quite did 40. We did 22 with Bob and Sean, and I think we did another 15 with just Sean. Maybe 18 or something like that with just Sean. So, so anyway, that'd be almost 40. That would be 40. 18 would be 40. Okay, you're getting bored. So I'm trying to be interesting. This is me doing my very best to be interesting. Okay, you know what I want to do is I want to go to the ones in chapter 9. I think that would be enough. Okay, so if you don't have any context for what we're doing, you can watch the sermon video from this morning, and it will probably be on whatever channel you're watching on or platform. It should be on the same one. It should be the previous video to this. So you can watch that if you want. In fact, you could pause this, watch that, and then come back and watch this. Or not.
But then we'd miss your comments.
We'd miss your comments. So it's a good point. So so what we've been doing in December is we've been looking at what I've been calling Christmas according to the prophets. And what I mean is that the prophets all or pretty much all, at least mentioned to some extent that there was this Messiah coming. And when would he come would be Christmas, of course. But what was interesting to me as I was kind of putting this together and thinking about it was that in almost all cases, when they would talk about the Messiah coming, they would also talk about the kingdom. Most of the Messiah passages also make some mention, and right next to it, of this coming kingdom. And so to think about those two events really are kind of spread out, Jesus came in 4 AD, between 4 and 7 AD. I don't want to get into that. I don't want to get into it. The numbers got messed up somewhere in the Middle Ages, but he came around 0 AD. But the kingdom still hasn't come. And if somebody says the kingdom has come, then I would say go and read the passages in the prophets about the kingdom. Because the things that they say, they just haven't happened yet. I mean, unless you make it really allegorical and really metaphorical, but it just hasn't. If this is the kingdom, I'm disappointed, Yeah. So anyway, we looked at a lot in Isaiah because there's quite a few. I mean, Isaiah seems to be packed with it, but and there's some really good ones. But the ones that we kind of know the best, I think, are in chapter 9, and then one reference in chapter 7. So, can you comfortably read that from there?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you read that?
Nevertheless, the gloom will not be upon her who is distressed, as when at first he lightly esteemed the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, and afterward more heavily oppressed her by the way of the sea beyond the Jordan in Galilee of the Gentiles.
So what do you know of Galilee?
I know that that's where Jesus came.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we think of Galilee as. That wouldn't have been what the people in Isaiah's time thought of Galilee. They kind of thought of it as like, so basically the way that this all happened was that the Galilee is farther north, and it was the area where, at least it occupies part of the area where the northern 10 tribes were, and they were taken off into exile. And so then and when they went into exile, some Assyrian people were kind of transplanted into that area. And so it kind of got covered up with Gentiles. And then some of the people that were exiled came back from those 10 tribes, but they intermixed with the people there. And it just kind of became this place where the southern 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin, kind of looked at it as like, it's just a contaminated place now. Is it part of Israel? Yeah, it traditionally was and all that, but it kind of had become contaminated. And so it was really hard for them to think about, like, the Messiah coming out of that area, So, I don't know, that's kind of interesting.
It is interesting.
So why is he talking about it? Well, let's see.
The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in the land of the shadow of death, upon them a light has shined. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulder, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace.
Now, I'm thinking you've heard this verse before. How does it strike you? I mean, like, what stands out about this? I'm just thinking I've been talking too much. It's your turn to talk a bit. What stands out to you about this verse?
The government part always has stood out to me, I think, and it's a comforting thing that the government is going to be with him.
Yeah, when we use the word government, it seems like it almost feels like that's a naughty word, like when we talk about Jesus and the Messiah's kingdom and things like that, we think of it in kind of these ethereal, glowing terms. And then we come to the word government, it's like, government, And not that government's all bad. Obviously, there's sometimes good things that government does, but it's people. It's broken, sinful people that get together and try to do their best, hopefully. And so our concept of government is kind of rough, But for this verse and a few others in the Bible, it's a reminder that government could be good if it's led by Jesus. If it's led by righteousness, which is one of the things that Paul talks about a bunch. And so, here, let's click over. Because now I can point like this. Can this work? So, the government will be upon his shoulders. It's a really interesting phrase to me because it's like, like in 2 Timothy, we know that he talks about those who are faithful to him will reign with him, but it's on his shoulders.
Yeah.
It's his responsibility to bring this about.
Well, and with him, I don't know, just the idea of him governing, of him being the judicial, the justice, all of that
Yeah.
coming from him sounds way better than coming from, like you said, people who are sinful.
Yeah, in the Gospels, we don't get to see how. We don't get to see him govern, but we get to see his character. We get to see people ask him questions, and one that comes to mind is, I think, were they in Samaria maybe, and the people kind of rejected him there, or they weren't interested in, and John and James and John, or I should have looked this up, but James and John, or maybe it's Peter and John, say to Jesus, should we call down fire from heaven to destroy the cities, And so we get to see, unaided, without the Holy Spirit, what type of leader John would have been. What type of leader, if it was Peter, I can't remember if it was Peter, what kind of leader they would have been. If they had the power, they would have wiped them out, And, clearly Jesus didn't do that, And so we get to see that his method is different. And so, and in the prophets we've seen over the last few weeks, there are little glimpses of what his rulership will be like, And Isaiah talks about this rod that comes out of Jesse, which is the family tree of David, and it uses this idea of like an iron rod, and he will rule with an authoritarian approach, but he's also able to see things with righteousness. He's able to rule with righteousness. And so authoritarianism we always think of as bad, but it's because the authoritarian leader that we always have in the world is a human.
Yeah.
And you give a human, absolute authoritarian power, and it goes bad all the time. But you put Jesus in that role, and we got a different situation altogether, which is...
And I think by his name, later in this verse, we can see a lot of the characteristics of what that government will be like.
Yeah, wonderful.
Wonderful, a counselor, so he's going to be, to me that doesn't say like just bossing everybody around, or, kind of what you think of sometimes with that. And then everlasting Father and Prince of Peace, so I don't know.
Yeah, what governor or president or king could ever fit those titles, there might have been a wonderful king at some point, but was he also considered kind of like a father, or was he a prince of peace? Because a lot of times what we have in government is somebody can make peace, but they make peace by wielding a bigger stick, or something like that. And so he's able to both be wonderful, he's able to be a counselor, but he's also able to wield peace. And everlasting Father is interesting. There's certainly leaders that have kind of been a fatherly type figure, but it doesn't last. They are in their role for a while, and then they grow old, and some younger person with bigger muscles comes in and takes over. So really exciting to kind of imagine this world. Let's read that one.
Of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end, upon the throne of David and over his kingdom, to order it and establish it with judgment and justice from that time forward, even forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this.
So what stands out to you about all that? Let me go back. Nothing
You
at all?
can go to the next one.
Oh, sorry.
I'm rereading it.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I don't know, the zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this is interesting to me.
Why is that?
I don't know, that just kind of the
You ever heard the discussion about like whether or not God has emotions? I mean, to me, this kind of relates to that. Like some people say, "Oh, he's emotionless. It's all about him." Just I don't know. I don't know what it would be if he doesn't have emotions. But this to me is like there's things he likes.
I guess it's because it shows his passion.
Yeah.
In it, and
yeah, there's things he cares about. There's things he likes. There's things he wants to happen, and this is one of the things he wants to happen. He wants this government to be on the shoulders of his son. He wants to put his son in a worldwide dictatorial leadership role. And that's really interesting to see that that's his passion. But I think one of the reasons, I'm going to take a guess, that one of the reasons it's his passion is because he knows it's what we need. We need leadership. The world in general needs leadership, top to bottom. The animal kingdom needs us to be, their leadership. That's what we're designed to do, is to guide the world. And we're not doing a great job of that, probably. We'll do maybe okay. I mean, I have a cat. I'm doing okay with him, but...
Yeah, you've got that under control.
But I think the capacity is greater. I think we are... our role in this world is to be something better than we are. But we also need leadership, from our Creator. And so it's interesting that he's passionate about that. And I think he's passionate about it because it brings him glory, but because he knows it's what we need, and he loves us. He wants what's best for us. And so that's a really exciting one. I took out I didn't have the Isaiah 7:14 in here. Isaiah 7:14 is this kind of dangling verse that talks about how the virgin will conceive and bear a son, and it'll be a sign. And it really connects to what we see at the very beginning of the Gospels. Like this one. Why don't you read that one?
And she brought forth her firstborn son and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. Now,
obviously, this isn't the whole Christmas story, but we know the Christmas story really well. And so I really like this idea of like taking what we know about the Christmas story and kind of grafting into it what we see in the prophets, because I think we don't, with the exception of this one we read from chapter 9 of Isaiah, that sometimes gets brought up at Christmas, but the others, a lot of times they're not brought up because people don't think of Christmas as the time to be thinking about the future kingdom. They'll say, oh, that's eschatology. We don't need to be thinking about eschatology at Christmas. Christmas is about Jesus coming, being the Savior of the world. Well, it is that, but Jesus, one of the ways that he will save the world is literally by forming a government that works. He saves us from our sin. He saves us spiritually. He saves us practically. He saves us through resurrection. But he also will save the world as we know it by changing the way that it works, by renovating, by turning the deserts into fruitful and productive land, and renovating the animal kingdom. Isaiah is packed with references to... Isaiah, by the way, is the book where it talks about the lion laying down, or actually it's the wolf lays down with, there's actually not a verse that says the lion lays down with the lamb. That's kind of an amalgam. It's the wolf lays down with the lamb, and then it's another set, and then it mentions the lion.
Yeah.
The lion plays with the...
I was watching the sermon with Eiley, and she was very interested in those. Those verses.
The wolf and the lamb shall feed together. The lion shall eat straw like the ox. So it's conceivable that the lion might lay down with the lamb as well. Maybe they all have a nice place to lay. But anyway, it's just the lion and the
one where the child leads.
The child leads him is an earlier one. Let's see.
That's the one that she saw, and she had all sorts of questions about.
Oh, really? What did she say?
She kept saying, in the new world, will babies be able to just walk instead of their mamas having to carry them? And
that's interesting.
She had some interesting ideas.
Well, what did you tell her?
I don't know. I guess we'll have to find out.
Here's a similar reference. The wolf also shall dwell with the lamb. The leopard shall lie down with the young goat. the calf and the young lion and the fatling together. So it'd be the calf and the lion and the fatling, which I don't know, I guess that's a cow of some kind, I'm not sure. And a little child shall lead them. Oh, and this one's really interesting. This is the one that's the cow and the bear shall graze. That's a different physiology, total change. Lion shall eat straw like the ox. And here's the chilling one. The nursing child shall play by the cobra's hole, and the weaned child shall put his hand in the viper's den. It's a different world. It's an absolute different world. So anyway, that's what we talked about this morning. You can go and watch that video on whichever platform you want. Now somebody, let's see, Anthony posted a comment that says 6 hours ago. Seems like that's a response to something that we didn't see. So I can't...
That's probably 6 hours ago would be the live video from this morning.
Yeah, that would make sense.
The stream from this
I'm just
morning.
wondering if there's some discussion that we're not seeing on our comment thing. But
yeah, we're not seeing any comments really.
yeah, so
But
if you're
maybe
commenting,
everyone's
wave
quiet.
at us. And well, no, that won't work either. I don't know. So yeah, sorry if you're
commenting, yell really
commenting.
loud.
Oh, there is. Oh, that's Dusty. Hey, Dusty.
She said
See.
Katie's excited that she can have a pet lion someday.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I think about that every once in a while when my cat's name is Lynx, and he limps and he's old and he's whiny. But then we watch these wildlife shows with lions. We watched one last night that was really good. This Night on Earth.
Earth at
night. It's nighttime shots. It's amazing. Really well shot. Really interesting. But they're not tame. I mean, they're frightening, And so to imagine, because they're big. I mean, a lion is, you go to the zoo and just kind of size them up. I mean, they are massive. They're, especially tigers. Whew, they're huge. But anyway, a child will lead them. We'll let our kids go out and play with huge predatory
Yeah, I've thought
animals.
about that before. At our local zoo, the white tiger likes to walk right up against the glass.
Yeah.
And, there's been times we've had our kids there just as toddlers, and they're right there. All that's between them is the glass, but...
Yeah, and the head's like this big.
Yeah.
Man.
It's crazy to imagine the glass not being there and, a toddler just standing there right.
Yeah. One I'm kind of interested in messing around with is a giraffe. I think that'd be kind of fun. I don't know. The giraffe, their head is like as big as my torso. I mean, it's just massive. So yeah, I mean, it's a different world. It's fun to imagine what that'll be like and what mysteries await. I like the idea that there's grand mysteries that will kind of unfold in that time. Let's see. Christina said, 40 videos by Sean and Bob. That's impressive. When and where will they be published? Good question. We're still kind of working out the schedule. They will probably be posted on their website for their YouTube channels and their website first, and then eventually we'll get them up on ours too. We're going to let them post them first. So that probably pretty soon. We're going to have a kind of a phone call about the schedule soon, so we'll get that out. So if you subscribe to them or you subscribe to us, you probably will see them eventually. So, yeah, so that should be exciting. Well, is there anything else we need to say? How are we on time?
We hope you'll join us for
My watch is dead.
Christmas Eve.
Yeah, Christmas Eve.
I guess we'll just say 5 o'clock.
I think it's fine.
Just our normal time.
And
it may not be like a discussion type thing, more just to sit with your family and
reason
watch
being
things.
is because I'm not sure if we'll actually shoot it on Christmas Eve.
Yeah,
We may shoot it before and then air it then so that we could actually be on the comment section or something. But if you're going to send us a video to put into the Christmas special telling us about your Christmas, how are things different, how's God faithful to you even in this season, you probably want to send that to us earlier rather than later, because we may shoot it by Wednesday or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So maybe send it by Wednesday.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
And make sure when you shoot it, you turn your phone sideways.
This
Not
way.
this way.
This isn't
This
a
way.
phone, but
Do it
this
this
works.
But you'll
this,
have black bars next
This
to
is what we want if you shoot a video. So, if you don't shoot a video, don't worry about it. But we would love to see what's going on in your world. Alrighty, well, yeah, I guess that's it.
Did you have like a bottom line for Isaiah?
If I did, it's escaped me. If I did, it's escaped me. Well, okay, so I'll just be honest. I really believe in having like a solid one-liner bottom line for sermons, but in this one, my approach was kind of a little different. It was kind of like, I just want us to look at the as much of what is said about the kingdom as we can. Mm-hmm. And so that was really more of the focus, is to kind of educate us about what is said about the kingdom, and to add those thoughts to our thoughts about Christmas. And so, I don't know, the bottom line would be probably the thing I keep repeating, I guess that's usually the bottom line, is that the great gift that God gave the world is not only a Savior to save us from our sins, but it's a king and a coming kingdom, and so that was kind of the focus of it. So I don't know if that's a bottom line.
We haven't completely unwrapped the gift yet.
We haven't unwrapped the gift yet. That's pretty good.
I feel like it's kind of like, have you ever gotten one of those gifts where it's like a gift within a gift within a gift kind of thing?
It's like nesting dolls or something. I mean, to me, I think the reason why I like talking about the kingdom is because I think it's a motivator. I think it motivates us to be faithful and to stick with, our own maturing and our own developing. If we don't think that there is a kingdom coming, if we don't think that the things that the Bible talks about are literal and practical, it's really easy to kind of just let it slip, And so to understand the kingdom is to understand a little bit more about what our future is and why we ought to be motivated to stick with it and to mature. So to me, that's the value. And I think Christmas is a great time to think about that, because there are a lot of interpersonal things that come out around Christmas that we don't have the opportunity to realize about ourselves until Christmas, because we take our entire family, we put us all in a small box, and then we realize, oh, I'm a grouchy person, or whatever it is. So,
or for this year, it might be you're alone.
A lonely
when you're
person.
Usually with everybody,
I'm a lonely person,
you're left contemplating yourself a little more than.
Which not everybody likes to do.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. Well, we love you guys, and
we should pray before we go.
Yeah.
You should pray.
We should.
I would like you to pray.
We should. All right. Let's do that. That's a good idea. Thank you, Lord, for these wonderful folks. And thank you for your word, that you inspire us as we consider what's to come, this future kingdom, this renovated world. I pray that you'd allow that to motivate us towards good works and faithfulness to you. Pray, Lord, that these who have joined us tonight would be able to stay focused this week on your hopefully soon return, your imminent return. I pray that we would stay faithful until you do return. In your name, amen.
Amen.
All right, thank you guys. Love you.
We'll see you Christmas Eve.
See you Christmas Eve.